Okay, here we go. For anyone watching the recording after, you can probably skip the first minute or two. For anyone who's already here, which is probably no one, this is going to be short again. Am I already muted? Excellent. All that set up. Switch that to live. Epic Pen is open. So then we just go get everything else that we need. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Make sure it's not frozen. All right. Synced. Nobody is here yet. So I'm going to take a sip of water and we'll wait a second or two and I'll check to see if anybody's there. And then I'll start. And like I said, this is going to be short, definitely less than half an hour. And I do apologize for this being so late compared to when it would usually be. But I was doing stuff. And also, once I sat down, I got really indecisive about whether or not I was actually going to stream. And then only now I finally decided I would. Two, one. All right. So there are a number of things going on, uh, new things that you might have seen. Actually, hold on. Let's zoom out. So overall, the IDF continues bombing everybody. Like I've said in the past, ever since the quote unquote ceasefire was signed, it has not been actually adhered to by either side. The IDF continues to strike Iran, and Iran continues attempting to strike the IDF and attempting to strike U.S. bases in northern Iraq. It's just that the IDF succeeds at its strikes, which are every other day or so, and it's usually like one thing, one building that they target in Tehran. And Iran tries launching like a few Shahed drones every other day and having one of their proxy terror groups launch like one or two missiles and everything gets shot down, so nothing really happens. But outside of the Israel Iran direct stuff, the IDF has continued bombing everybody else from Lebanon to Syria to groups in Iraq and Yemen. Just recently, they bombed that Houthi port in western Yemen. Again, the oil terminal facilities and the port infrastructure was already destroyed last time. This time, they bombed the construction equipment and crews while they were starting the process of attempting to rebuild that port and oil terminal and associated infrastructure. They've also continued bombing Lebanon. Quite a bit of it has been in Beirut in the middle of crowded streets. Seems to be a favorite thing. They are still. This was the Golan Heights border originally. They are still holding on to the further push that they did, the bit that they seized during the chaos when Assad fell back in December, and have still said that they may have to, for the security of the Syrian people, apparently, that they may have to expand their security zone into Syria, but still waiting to see whether they actually do that. The big thing that has happened recently that is probably the most covered one is down here in the southwest. where there are a number of minority groups relative to Syria, as Syria is not all just Arab and Muslim, and even within Syria regarding like the Arab thing, they still consider themselves like different from Arabs. They consider themselves Syrian or Assyrian. But within Syria, there also are minority groups. It's not entirely Muslim and it's not entirely uh, Arab Assyrian. There are minority groups. In this case, the Bedouin tribes and the minority Druze religion slash ethnic group slash kind of it's both. And those two have fought each other in the past and currently started fighting each other again over the last couple weeks. And it's primarily around this one city, Suwaida down here. Oops, no, just exit all off. And as the situation deteriorated, the new Syrian government sent actual army forces in to try to basically wedge in between the two groups and create a manpower wall basically to stop them from fighting each other. And the IDF took that opportunity to bomb the new Syrian army, as they had already bombed everything they could get targeting reticles on in terms of military equipment and weapons and everything that belonged to the prior Assad Syrian army. And so these are like some of the few tanks and armored vehicles that the new Syrian army has left that it can use. And the IDF took the opportunity to bomb most of those once they were out in the open and on the roads. Under under the stated reason of we'll do the quotation marks up here. Under the stated reason of protecting, here we'll do a heart in quotation marks. Under the stated reason of protecting the specifically the Druze minority, even though this was the Syrian army coming in to get in between two individual groups, the Druze and the Bedouin, who were fighting each other. Uh, the Israeli government insists it was the Syrian army coming in to actually massacre everybody, and so that they had to do this, or else everybody would have died, even though that's not the case. The various groups themselves, also say that. The one exception, the only person who is not on Twitter literally, but effectively politically retweeting whatever the Israeli government is saying, is one of the three, because there's not a unified like Druze like government structure. There's three separate leadership. There's three separate leadership areas, and one of theirs is repeating whatever the Israeli government says. But the others and the leaders of the Bedouin tribes are also saying what the new Syrian government said, which is, uh, you know, we were fighting each other and they were coming in to stop us. We didn't want them to stop us because we wanted to keep fighting each other, but they were coming down to stop us from fighting each other. So also with what it has left, the new Syrian government, even if what Israel said was true, does not have the military material capacity to carry out like large, like million-person massacres anymore. So that situation arose and is currently ongoing. New updated India, China, and US population projection graphs that I will show you guys later in this video in a bit. We see if anybody's here. Tony's here. I'm assuming the same Tony as usual. I don't remember the last initial. So now another one. Insert the DJ Khaled meme here. Up around here, up around here somewhere on the Cambodia-Thailand border, which was drawn rather poorly by France 121 years ago in 1904. And so it wasn't really clear along this stretch up here exactly where stuff was. And right there where the clashes are ongoing is over a really old. I don't know what actual time frame it's from, but I think from it's from like around like 1200 or 1000 or something. It might be before that, but there's a really old uh, sacred sacred temple slash like ancient archaeological historical site that both nations really like and would prefer that it belonged to them on their side of the border, and they're now they have gotten into beef with each other over this in the past, and now it's kind of just another instance of it happening again. And it got to the point where Cambodia started firing MLRS rocket barrages, which are those trucks, whether you see like modern ones like US HIMARS, or in the case of what Cambodia is using, really old like 1950s Soviet stuff where it's literally just the individual tubes. You can see them like just duct taped together essentially. They've been firing rocket barrages across the border into Thailand at effectively no one, and have killed 14 literally just random people, not even not as like a side effect of trying to hit the Thai military, but killing civilians in the process. They did actually just fire effect. They basically just fired at random and have killed 14 just random Thai people that were just I don't know, strolling through the woods or whatever. And so in response to this, Thailand has launched several sorties of combat jets across the border and has bombed a number of Cambodian military, I don't know, outposts, if you want to, probably better to say that than bases because they're not that big and they're not that well infrastructured exactly. Cambodia doesn't really have that much going in its military direction. And they also obviously bombed those particular positions, those particular MLRS trucks that were across the border doing that. And now there has also been there's also been now regular like infantry fire exchange between the two countries along the border around that temple, with the two of them trying to avoid hitting the temple because that's kind of what they're fighting over. It is, technically a border dispute, but it's not a border dispute in like the normal sense of being related to wanting more land area or wanting, imperial expansion or additional agricultural land. It is actually about wanting that like ancient historical site. And Thailand has begun moving in additional military forces, as you saw in the thumbnail I put up for the stream. And Thailand has an actual military with actual military vehicles and stuff. Cambodia does have really old Soviet stuff from the 40s and 50s, but they don't have a lot of it. And when you get beyond that, it turns into like basically, what you would see from, I don't know, the Congolese military over in Africa, where, it is just a bunch of dudes with AKs riding in some Jeeps. So this is uh, for for a like face to face, you win or you don't engagement. Not talking about an invasion and like occupation, but for a single like conflict or battle engagements, this would be completely one sided. If they really decide they actually want to go for it over this, which I hope not, because you can just have it be like a gray zone and say that anybody from either side or anywhere in the world can like visit it. Lots of people do this. India and Nepal do this. Them and Bangladesh do that. Even some places, ironically, at times, India and Pakistan, I think, have even done that with each other. And various some countries in the Middle East actually even do that with each other. Like, come on, you can pull this off. It's not that difficult. Cuba update. So, guess whose government finally? Let's hope we don't. Okay, it's just vitamin advertisements. I was going to say, let's hope it's not bimbos this time. Otherwise, I'm going to have to refresh until it's not. So, guess whose government finally publicly admitted to the World Population Forum at the UN or whoever, where all these population updates get filtered through for websites like TDE. They finally publicly admitted to their mass emigration population crash. Ignore the gray bar here. I know I've told you guys in the past this gray bar comes from the website's like algorithm looking at the trend. In this case, it would be the prior trend here, and just assuming roughly where it thinks the next bar would be based on that. So the algorithm is considering these to be anomalies, which I mean they are. Their population would not have done this if it weren't for over 1 million people fleeing the island over the last 3 years. But it's not about to suddenly bounce back. So, like even Cubans that are being targeted for mass deportation, which I is kind of weird to see Republicans in the U.S. wanting to do, since Cubans are like the one of the two groups coming from Latin America that like always vote right or conservative. So that feels a bit like self-defeating from their end. But okay, so even the ones that are being mass deported are not even being sent directly back to Cuba. They're usually being sent to like third-party countries. In a lot of cases, it's Mexico. And Mexico, in most cases, offers to let them stay. And I promise you, they will absolutely agree to stay in Mexico rather than go back to Cuba. Not just the Cuba you knew, but what Cuba has deteriorated into over these last 3 years specifically. No one is going back to it. So they finally admitted to this. In reality, that was as of the end of 2023 or start of 2024, the 10.1 million. In reality, as of right now, it's at about 9.8 or so. But I I don't know if they're gonna like actually update that in time or if they're gonna wait another 3 years before they say anything official. And it's just gonna be like three gray bars next to each other up until we're in 2028 or something. But Cuba did finally admit to that. And for the US, China, and India, I have new updated projections based on updated numbers, uh, continued continued decline, continued decline of birth rates, and also stacked different stacked scenarios of like this is what it will look like if XYZ happens. So the Chinese one was already up to date, so I didn't need to do like a serious modification to it. But the Chinese population projection as of current, and I'm trusting you guys to be smart enough to figure out where 2025 is. It's right here in the middle between 2000 and 2050. So the blue one obviously is the current projection and goes like that, with them getting down to less than 700 million at the end of the century. If their birth rate, their TFR, continues falling, it's around one or in the upper nines right now, or upper 0.9s rather. If it falls all the way to around or just under 0.8, like their neighbors have, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore is the other major Asian one that's fallen like super low. If China's also falls that low and then stays there, like Taiwan and South Korea in particular have been doing, then their projection would change and end up looking more like the red line, which would see them going from still just a bit over 1.4 billion right now down to only 500 million by the end of the century. And I'll obviously do more updates, every couple years as things change for each country. I will be working on these for all the other countries, at least ones that release regular data, whether that's every year, other year, or every 5 years in the case of India, which is the reason why I now finally was able to make an updated one. Where I have to open a new window here just so that make sure anyone who hasn't already been told knows. If you want to see these graphs at any time or get a hold of them yourself, or any other hundreds of graphs across all kinds of different subjects, you can come click this link in the description of any video, the free access drive. You come here, and there's the different folders that you can go into that then have, like, let's click on the oil one. Will then have subfolders, and then in each folder are all the different graphs you can click on. And I try to make each type of data have like different graph styles and stuff, just so there's some variety. But this drive folder is free to access at any time for anyone. There is no paywall in front of it. But any support through PayPal and Patreon isn't just in regards to the YouTube channel. That also majorly helps motivationally with the constant preening and updating of all the databases and stuff. And I started doing this specifically because websites like TDE, which used to have so much free data of this kind, started doing this. I think you can still go up to 10 years. You can. What happens if you try to go back more than 10 years? Oh, look, a paywall. And so they have done that for basically everything. But you can get all kinds of stuff here, population and demographics, fertility rate charts, real ones, not the front page Google AI ones, which are not correct. We'll just say that. And population projections. I will start putting the updated ones here as well. But you can find any of those anytime there. And also show you the updated ones now that we have for what I put the US ones. Oh, here it is. So under previous assumptions, mine was a bit lower, but even a lot of similar similar ones went the same way. Previous assumptions was mostly that the US would look like the blue line. It would peak up around a bit above 370 and basically plateau there, only declining down to like the mid 360s by the end of the century. The newest outlook, if incoming immigration levels remain the same, the newest outlook based on current data and current fertility rate plus expected trends is actually now more looking like the red line, where it will peak under 370, probably around 367, 368, and curve over sooner and actually decline by a decent bit down to or under 350, probably around like 340 or something by the end of the century. Now, if the stated mood of surveyed people around the world who were otherwise considering immigrating to the US, if that comes to fruition, there has been a mood shift of roughly 20 to 30% of said people now saying that they feel like they're most likely not going to because of the current attitudes of the US government and the implied attitudes of the citizens who voted for that government. Uh, Never mind again, the left right divide in the US basically always being a 51 to 49 or 50.5 to 49.5 divide. But uh, if that manifests, which we will know for certain once we get the data for this year at the end of the year or at the very beginning of next year, so in like 6 months or so, uh, under a 25% reduced immigration inflows scenario, then the US population projection will end up looking like the green line, in where it will peak even earlier, only a bit into the 350s, and will then curve out and decline down to around 320 or less by the end of the century. But again, we have to see whether that reduced number of incoming migrants or immigrants actually does like come to fruition. Whether that sentiment actually manifests into action. Actually, hold on. I'll leave the world map up. Last thing we're going for before I end the stream is prices. In this one in particular, looking at copper, and we can't go all the way back in time for copper because of the paywall. How awesome is that? I'll have to go back and find another site that does allows long-term prices, just to show you that I'm not lying. But yes, this is record high for copper. It got up to at the highest point $5.90 and has 6 months and has fallen back down since then to just under $5.80. That $5.90 is the highest it's ever been, both nominally and inflation adjusted. Inflation adjusted, the some of the prior high points from years back would come close. They would get up over five, apart from and would have been above the $5.25 back earlier this year, but they would not exceed the $5.90, even adjusting for inflation. So this is a new actual record in all senses for copper prices, which I said both at the start of the decade and at the midpoint when I made both the 2020s, the decade ahead video, and the uh, what did I call the midway one? The rest of the 2020s, or they were streams, I think. I'm not sure, but those are those are somewhere on the channel. You can watch those. One of the things I said was during, especially the later part of this decade, copper is going to end up hitting multiple times and starting to hang around in a range of 6 plus, between 6 and 10, most likely. Now, the reason that investors are giving for this is just like with silver, the wrong reasons. They're pricing it up for the wrong reasons, primarily because they're scared of the tariff stuff. Which I mean, yeah, that's a thing, but there is also actual supply constraints, especially with silver. But there are now supply constraints with copper as well, as the mine in Panama that was responsible for 1% of the world's supply has been effectively shut down permanently. There have been some safety shutdowns in some mines in Peru recently because of rain and landslide concerns. Chile has been going down in its copper output consistently, was outputting 6 million tons per year. Uh, Looks like this year it's going to average less than 5, probably only around 4.8. That's not because it's depleting its copper. It's because the Chilean government has, the new one that was elected in, I think, 2021, has consistently axed any, basically any new mine startup requests or mining license renewal requests from any companies. They've approved like a grand total of three out of 200 that have been applied for over the past few years. So they're just wholesale going anti-mining, even though that's kind of like with oil and gas for the Middle Eastern countries. Mining revenue is a huge chunk of the Chilean government's like budget provision. So that is constantly uh, removing about 1% per year from the global supply. Granted, that has been at a gradual enough pace that it's been replaced each year, but now we've been having more sudden things like the Panama permanent shutdown, disruptions out of the Congo, as there is, you know it most famously for the cobalt and the tantalum up there, but there is also copper mined in the Congo, quite a bit of it. And they've had an awful lot of horrendous flooding over the past month or two that has disrupted outbound shipments of basically everything. And they've had to reroute stuff like down and across through neighbors up here and over there and stuff, which they don't have that much interconnectivity. So they've only been able to ship out small amounts of stuff. And wait, 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 wait. Google Earth always ruins the stream. So they've had to pick and choose like what they send out, and they're choosing the tantalum and the cobalt because those are, more expensive and earn them more revenue. Also continuing to see declines in output from Russia as their mining output just all across the board continues to increase its downward curve, now down by double-digit percentages from before and at the start of the invasion, as they've been cut off from resupply of mining vehicles and machinery equipment and replacement parts. So they're having to constantly continue cannibalizing, which obviously whittles and whittles down what you can continue to do and work with. And there was there was one other supply disruption area that I forgot. I forgot which other country was having another sudden supply disruption. But anyways, for the long-term stuff, Chile is going to continue going down because they're not approving anything new. Ecuador doesn't mind much, but they also have said they're not going to approve anything new, so they are now going to only go down. Panama shut down permanently. Wait, 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 wait for it. Output from Australia is potentially going to go down after it's kind of stalled for a while, as they're they're not anti-mining on some things, but on other things they are. Like they're fine with mining the uranium, they're fine with mining the iron, and they're fine with mining the lithium and cobalt and the rare earths. But other things they don't seem to like for some reason. Like their government at least is not that big on like the gold and silver mines anymore, or the copper ones. That feels really, really weird. A really weird setup of picking and choosing. And China is, at least in terms of physical supply, mining stuff from the ground, starting to hit their limit ceiling in terms of how much they can get out of the ground, how fast. So copper is also like silver, just not in the same sense, not a peak and quick dive after that, like global silver output from mines has been since the mid 2010s. Copper is starting to get to its plateau globally. And since our demand for it is not stopping, both from the ongoing increase in, construction of actual infrastructure, especially electric infrastructure in economically rising nations, and the whole mega switch over to all electric everything and EVs and grid storage batteries. Demand for copper is not going to stop climbing when the supply stops climbing, which it is getting close to doing. All right, that is. Hold on. Was there anything else? Was there anything else I'm forgetting? No, I'm pretty sure not. All right, that's going. Pennies going out of circulation. Those are not made of copper. Uh, they they are they're made of zinc and they are coated. They're coated with copper so that they'll be brown. Unless you were talking about pennies going out of circulation for like a different reason. But those aren't made out of copper. They were a long, long time ago, but I think we switched over to making them out of zinc because it was cheaper in like the 50s or 60s. But that's going to be it for this one. Again, I apologize this was so late and without announcement, but I was really indecisive. And also, I'd been doing stuff earlier